Welcome to Uniquely Qualified. I'm your friend and host, Liz Ficken, and I'm so glad you're here. Uniquely Qualified is a podcast that empowers guests to share their experience, strength, and hope in overcoming challenges in the spirit of mutual healing. We hope that you'll be feeling more aware, connected, and supported in navigating the human experience. Today, I'm joined by a fabulous guest and sorority sister, Roxanne, known to many of us as Roxy. Roxy is a Marin County native with a passion for community and communication. After earning a communications degree from Chapman University, where she was Panhellenic president among many things, she returned to the Bay Area to start her career in marketing and communications, specializing in digital and print design, website management, strategic messaging, and content creation. Living with scoliosis since childhood and facing physical setbacks at a young age taught her resilience, while navigating pregnancy deepened her understanding of strength and adaptability. Now, as she prepares to welcome her third child, Roxy balances family, health, and career. Today, she shares her story of overcoming obstacles, embracing life's challenges with strength and vulnerability, asking for help when needed, and recognizing silver linings that emerge through the struggles we face in our lives. Roxy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Very
Oh,
excited
I'm
to be
so
here.
glad to have you. It's so great to have this opportunity to reconnect. And
Yes.
I was so grateful when you were willing to talk about your health journey and share it with our listeners.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank
hmm
you.
So, Roxy, how are you uniquely qualified?
I am uniquely qualified to speak about living with scoliosis from a young age and
hmm
everything that comes along with that, including its challenges and its setbacks, but also the way it builds resilience and provides silver linings in our lives.
Yeah. Oh, I'm eager to get into that.
Yeah.
But before we dive directly into your health journey, I thought we might just chat a little bit about how we met at Chapman and just some undergraduate time reflection.
Yes, those were
I
good times.
Those were good times. I don't know that I have a specific memory of meeting you.
I
Um,
know. I was thinking about that too. I don't have a moment of that either, but Vegas trips and Alpha Phi and the 414 with
yeah,
Taylor and I just
yeah.
all of that.
And I think where we really developed a connection was you were Panhellenic president and I was Panhellenic delegate. So I
Yep.
was on the executive board of our sorority, but representing it where you were the leader. And that's
Right.
where I was like, oh, I like this girl. I remember it was like a scholarship dinner or something where
Yes.
they put Mad Libs on the table.
Yes.
And I just remember like the kind of laughing where it's like, I'm trying not to laugh because it's inappropriate to be laughing, but why'd they put these Mad Libs? And just like crying. And there's like a Facebook memory that pops up with that like
Yes.
every year where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just like the joy and the laughter is what
I'm
I
so
associate with
glad that
you.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that had like escaped my memory and you're right on. That was hilarious.
It was so funny. Like, love that idea. Maybe not for an event where you're supposed to have young people like listening
Right.
because you and I were all about those Mad Libs.
Totally. That's so
Yeah.
funny. Oh, yes. But yes, all of the meetings we've been in together for Greek life.
Yes.
And yes,
Yes.
you and I have always had that sort of type A productivity where we like to get things
hmm
done. So we always
Yeah.
connected in that way. Uh,
Yeah. Like a true like we like the things that you mentioned, that was a lot of like play, fun, being young women in Orange County. And but then also we got to see each other being like professional and buttoned up
yes,
and getting shit done. Also, we
absolutely.
can swear on here if you want, but
Okay,
like
good.
we don't
Yes. Yes.
but like yeah, getting it
Yeah.
done. And
It's
like
all about the balance.
I just remember you with your binder coming in. I was like, okay, let's go. Way to
Let's get it
represent.
done.
You were like, I'm ready, I'm prepared. So I
Yes.
appreciated that.
Yes. Yes.
And I think I would have had to search my memory where it's like, what are some facts about Roxy? I don't know that having scoliosis would have necessarily been on my like top 10 things of things I knew or remembered about you.
Yeah.
But when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, I did have that awareness because
hmm
one of my very close high school friends had scoliosis and we did marching band together. And so he would actually experience like there's a lot of like having to hold yourself very rigid and upright.
Mm-hmm.
And it would like he would talk about the kind of discomfort that it would cause him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember being like, oh, I wonder if Roxy experiences that. Because I
Mm-hmm.
would have never known, I think, if you wouldn't have said something.
Right, right.
Yeah.
They can call it an invisible illness, right? Like, so you wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily know. And that
Hmm.
was a time in my life where it really hadn't it wasn't affecting my day-to-day life. Like I had been through
Yeah.
some of the struggles that I'm now kind of revisiting again, but it was not something it would come up because you and I were out of town together and you know
Yeah.
sharing a room or whatever, and I had the scar on my back or whatever. You know what I mean? It would
Yeah.
come up in situations like that. Uh,
Yeah.
Probably why you knew, but it was not it didn't affect my day-to-day life at that time,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
That
know.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to share about Chapman times?
No, but I just have great memories of it, and I'm so
Me
happy that
too.
you and I are able to reconnect because of this podcast, which I'm so proud of you for doing this.
Oh, thank
um,
you.
and I'm excited to just reconnect with you as a friend in general beyond this.
Yeah,
So
me
yeah.
too. Me,
Yeah.
oh, so well said. And as I was getting ready for this, I was just thinking about some of the other people on Panhellenic and IFC where I'm like, I hope they listen to this and get to hear Roxy's story because it I don't know, like to know somebody when they're at like in that one, that like those 4 years,
Yep.
but there's so much time before that, and then now like you're a mama and
Hmm.
in a totally different stage of life. I'm like, I hope people get to see current Roxy and hear this story
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's so worthy of listening to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been great.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's dive a little bit into a medical summary of what scoliosis is. And I've started just lightly explaining this to people, that the reason that I don't ask guests to themselves describe like the medical summary of their condition or disease or whatever it might be is to take the emotional burden off. So Roxy knows about scoliosis from lived experience, and she's more of an expert than me, but just so that our listeners are all on the same page. Scoliosis is a medical condition characterized by an abnormal lateral curvature of the spine, often resembling a C or S shape. About 2 to 3% of the population is affected by scoliosis, which is millions of individuals worldwide. There are a couple kinds of scoliosis, the most common being idiopathic scoliosis, where an exact cause is unknown. And other types include congenital scoliosis resulting from spinal malformations present at birth, and neuromuscular scoliosis, which is associated with conditions like cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy. Scoliosis often develops during the growth spurt before puberty, which is typically between the ages of 10 and 15. And while both males and females can develop scoliosis, females are more likely to experience curve progression requiring treatment. Common signs include uneven shoulders, a prominent shoulder blade, uneven waist, or leaning to one side. And treatment options vary based on severity and may include observation, bracing, or surgery. Early detection is crucial for effective management. And many individuals with scoliosis lead normal, active lives. Like Roxy said, it can be an invisible condition. And in severe cases, though, if left untreated, it can lead to complications such as respiratory issues. And just in summary, knowing these facts about scoliosis can help with early recognition and management and promoting better outcomes for those affected. Is there anything that you would like to add to that brief little summary there, Roxy?
No, I think that's very thorough. Thank you for sharing.
Happy to. Even just in that little bit of research, I was like, oh man, more women than men, and oh, 10 to 15 years of age is when it's diagnosed. Just things that I never thought about as somebody who hadn't lived that experience before.
Right.
So, how about we jump into where you were in your life, in your childhood, when you received your scoliosis diagnosis?
Hmm. So I was in I believe, the fifth grade
Mm-hmm.
when I received the diagnosis. I had just come into a new school the prior year in the fourth grade. I had left a local public school, had transitioned to a small parochial school, like one class per grade, really tight knit
Yeah.
community, kind of a different setting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, yeah, at this new school with making new friends, kind of starting from scratch in that way. But
Yeah.
it was a positive thing for me. It was a really good change. And I was at my, pediatrician physical in the fifth grade, and they call it the Adams test, I think, and when you
Mm,
bend over and touch your toes, and that's one
yeah.
of the things they do. And a lot of schools actually have adapted that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of the first indication that I was maybe not aligned by my
Mm,
pediatrician. So,
mm-hmm.
in which case, then they sent me to a specialist to confirm that diagnosis of scoliosis.
Okay. So just kind of part of a standard pediatric checkup turned into seeking some specialty follow-up care. And is that when you received the official diagnosis?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And what type, I know I mentioned I think three different types of scoliosis. What is yours?
I'm told it's idiopathic scoliosis, which is the
Okay.
most common.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be genetic, but there's cases where it's not. And this was new in our family. I mean, no one was known to have scoliosis in my family. However, I say that in that there are people out there who do have mild cases, and
Mm,
they may not know. My
mm-hmm.
dad always had kind of a little bit of a totally not straight back. You could kind of see just very mild. And so
Yeah.
we did wonder if maybe it had come from his side of the family, but we never got confirmation about that.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been, but yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to the specialist, and were you at an age where it was appropriate to start moving towards a treatment plan, or what were the next steps after
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis?
Yeah, so they took X-rays and confirmed that I had a mild curve. I don't recall what the degree was, but it was
Mm-hmm.
mild, and kind of in a situation where you just want to monitor it. So I would go back,
Yeah.
I went back frequently,
Mm-hmm.
and they found that the curve was getting worse every time.
Mm-hmm.
And because in some cases, at that age, you're having these growth spurts. Sometimes it'll just kind of maintain at the curve it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will grow and it'll actually benefit them because then your spine is growing straighter, maybe when you're growing.
Oh, yeah.
In my situation, the more I grew, the worse the curve was getting as I was growing.
Mm.
And so, you know, we monitored it with these x-rays. I have such vivid memories of like the frequent doctor appointments, the x-ray. And it was back then before everything was digital. You had these like physical x-rays, and they put it on
Yeah.
the lighted up, screen, and they shove it in there to put it on the wall, and out would come the ruler, and you'd measure one side of the curve and you'd measure the other side of the curve, and you'd see them mark with the pencil the degree of the curve. And it was just like this routine every
Yeah.
time where I just like I knew what was happening,
Uh-huh.
and that degree was getting worse and worse. And then, there's a point, I don't know like the specifics of when they recommend to brace it, but I had gotten to the point of like, okay, we need to get a brace and start wearing a back brace to see
Mm-hmm.
if this can be effective in the progression of this curve.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the first step. And I got fitted for a brace, and the foam on the inside, the plastic outside, they had Velcro straps in the back. And I remember, it started kind of not, I didn't have to wear it it was like, I don't know, 5 hours a day or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like increased over time. Like, oh, now you're wearing it 23 hours a day. You can take it
Oh
off to
man.
shower. You know what I mean? It was like it kind of
Yeah.
progressed over time. So at first
Mm.
it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was bad because it's a time in your life when you're like fifth grade or sixth grade. At this point, it was probably sixth grade when I was braced. You just want to like fit in. You don't want to be
Yeah.
standing
You're-
out, and
No.
that aspect was very hard. I mean, just having to wear this brace, and it was under my clothes, but you know, trying to wear baggy clothes that hit it, or you know what I mean, just kind of
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely at an age where we all just want to fit in. We don't want to stand out or, have something different about us that, we're
Hmm.
just like so sensitive to social cues at that age. So yeah, that would be
Totally.
really hard.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
that was a bummer having to go to school and like, it would start the first half of the day, I would have to wear it. And then at that point, this was kind of in the beginning of the journey. And I
Hmm.
remember my mom would show up, bless her heart. She would show up at lunchtime every day and come pick up the big brace. She'd put it in a big garbage bag and walk out. And
Oh,
I was free and like I didn't have to wear my brace for the second half of the day. But she was like the bag lady coming to pick up my big back brace. It's just like, oh,
oh,
my mom, it's just like, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
What were some of the other questions that you had or thoughts that you had about receiving the diagnosis when you were so young?
Um, I was really at that point, oddly enough, was really concerned about my future and being a mom one day.
Yeah,
And I and
yeah,
I I asked the doctor, I said, is this gonna keep me from having, my own kids or carrying my own
right.
children one day? And
Hmm.
he assured me it wouldn't. And that was, but I was worried. I was, at that age was concerned about my long-term health and kind of my
Hmm.
future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so that's as we talk through your story, I know that's a thread we're definitely gonna
Yeah.
follow.
Hmm.
But that's is I just think that's pretty amazing looking back that young you were thinking about, will this impact my fertility? Will this be something that
Hmm.
impacts this dream of mine to be a mom one day?
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So you're in the brace, you're wearing it eventually progresses, you said, to 23 of 24 hours a day.
Yes, I could take it off for that shower, and
Oh
I had to
man.
sleep in it overnight. And then I would go back in there, and my mom would strap up the back straps. But when you took that brace off, it was like it's like a woman like taking her bra off at the end of the day,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like times 100.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. As you're saying that, I feel like I could take a big breath, sigh of relief. I know. Wow.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
I got a little relief, but then it was like back in it. So yeah, it ended up being, I was basically wearing it full time, which, you adapt to over time, but it's uncomfortable on hot days. And, it's a
Yeah.
whole nother thing happening under your clothes. So, yeah, I mean, not ideal, not fun.
Yeah. So I would imagine there were certain things that would restrict you from either from choice or because it just wouldn't make sense. Like, were you able to go swimming or, go to the beach and wear comfortable clothing
Hmm.
um while
Hmm.
you were wearing a brace, or was that something that you were like, I'm not going to deal with that?
You know what? Swimming was one of the things where the doctors really wanted me to swim. That was like really
Yeah.
good for the
Hmm.
scoliosis. So that was kind of an exception where like you could take the
Oh,
brace off and go swimming, for example.
yeah.
But you had to kind of pick and choose. I mean, I think there was a little wiggle room with that 23 hours, but yeah, I had to pick and choose. Like, am I going to go to the beach and not be braced for that time? And yeah, just trying to be
Hmm.
mindful of that, but trying to like
Hmm.
also have a somewhat normal life, which is like hard if you're wearing a brace 24 hours a day or 23 hours,
Right.
you know?
And in middle school, which is
Mm,
everything is just so intense when you're that age, I think.
totally, totally. And
Yeah.
I will say that the school I had transferred into was incredibly supportive. And it was
Good.
just this one class of like 30 kids. You had the same class every year. And I
Hmm.
think it was just a real supportive community. I don't ever remember, being made fun of or any sort of thing like that, which is great.
Good.
But
Hmm.
I think anything I felt was just my own feelings about, I don't want to stand out. I don't, just the age that
Yeah.
you're at,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
you know?
uh I not to make it about me, but relating to the middle school of it all, I'm a big sister with big brothers, big sisters, and she's a freshman in high school now. But those middle school years, I started working, mentoring her when she was in third grade. Just seeing, remembering what it's like, and maybe there are some parents that are listeners that see this through parenting, but where it's like, whoa, just feelings are magnified by 10. Like the
Oh,
first
for
time
sure.
she had her heart broken, it was like, oh, honey, I promise you it's going to be okay. But that
Yeah.
there's just like everything is just so, and I'm sure it's like hormones, and I'm not a child development expert, obviously, but
Oh
just
yeah.
to say, it took me back to what that's like
Yeah.
to be in fifth, sixth, seventh grade.
Yeah. It's a sensitive time.
It's very sensitive, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you were in a setting where you felt very supported,
Hmm.
and that your like mom could come and get the brace from you during the time where
Hmm.
you could do it like part time.
Hmm.
Were you at this point in and out of school for those doctor's appointments that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think we would try to arrange them after school,
Hmm.
so I'd go. But yes, frequent doctor's appointments for sure and monitoring
Hmm.
it. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so talk to us more about the progression of the condition, or anything else you would want to add about treatment, physical therapy, anything else that'll just help us understand what this
Hmm.
phase was like for you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I was doing physical therapy at this point. So it was the brace and physical therapy
Hmm.
until it was time to pursue other treatment plans.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you remember how old or about what grade you were in when
It
that
must
conversation happened?
it must have been the beginning of my first semester of seventh grade. So
Okay.
because I ended up having the surgery that January of my seventh grade year.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I think we reached a point where, after all these appointments, bad news after bad news after bad news, which gets to be pretty discouraging because every
Oh
time you go to
yeah.
the doctor, it's like, it's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm doing all the things that you're telling me to do. Um,
Yeah.
but it was an aggressive, progression. And then we had the conversation of, yeah, the doctor said, we got to do surgery. And I remember I actually fainted in the doctor's office in the
Oh
room because
no,
I
little
think it
Roxy.
was like traumatic, it was like,
Yes.
oh, I've been trying to like avoid this.
Hmm.
And you're at this age and it's just like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean, I remember I fainted. I was
Yeah.
with my mom. And then we kind of got past that. And it was like, and this is traumatic for my poor mother as well. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I'm her daughter, and it's just like, um, and at that point, we did get a second opinion just to kind of make sure that, just to do our research, right?
Yeah.
And we ended up switching actually to that other doctor who agreed that it was more than time to do the surgery. He said actually he would have done it earlier, and
Really.
he
Okay.
kind of remeasured a lot of my x-rays and said, these curves are a little more severe than the previous doctor had
Mm.
indicated. And we just felt like he was kind of the right choice to go with for the surgery. So we
Hmm.
actually pursued him
Hmm.
and moved forward with that surgery in January of 2001. So it's been
Wow.
many years that have gone
Yeah.
by. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you got a second opinion. I'm just kind of putting myself in your mom's shoes, and you have this child, this sixth to seventh grader who is going to have surgery on her spine. I would
Yes.
imagine you're like really wanting to make sure that she's getting the best care possible. And like you were saying,
Totally.
how scary that must have been for her too.
For sure. My parents were
Hmm.
were so I could sense that they were scared. But of
Yeah.
course they're trying to be strong for their child, and
Hmm.
of course that like they're trying to play all those roles of, and doing their research and making sure everything's, we're handling things in the best way.
Hmm.
But as a mom myself now, it's like, oh my gosh, and that's like a spinal surgery or like a brain surgery. Like these are like very intense surgeries that
So
there's
intense. I would
no room
imagine
for error.
exactly that's exactly what I was going to say. No room for error, high risk, where it's like
Yeah.
we are trusting, and you're an only child, correct?
Only child. Yep.
So our only, I'm like that gets to be like emotional. It's like
Mm-hmm.
this is our only baby. Like,
Mm-hmm.
please take the best care of her that you possibly can.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So what was that surgery like?
yeah. So let's see. Well, they insert titanium rods around your spine in this surgery. So like the physical side of the surgery or the emotional side, I don't know where you want to start with it, but
Oh,
is yeah.
wherever feels
Uh,
like a best start for
yeah.
you, or if there's even a step in between, okay, we're deciding to do surgery and then there's the surgery. I know some surgeries
Mm-hmm.
there's like a you need to prep yourself and
Yeah.
do
Right.
different things. I don't know if that was part of what you needed to do.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but I just yeah, it's a spinal fusion where, they use hooks and screws, and then they basically inserted these titanium rods on either
Yeah.
side of my spine. They took bone from my hip to use in the spinal fusion. And I remember
Oh.
my hip pain was particularly intense. I remember that after the surgery.
Hmm.
But it was a 5-hour surgery here at the local hospital. And just kind of traumatic, but also like I felt like I was in really good hands with my doctor. We really trusted him. But yeah,
Hmm.
that moment of being rolled into the operating room, separating from my parents, that was like a big moment that I remember, and how nervous we all were. And then yeah, 5-hour surgery. And then I just remember waking up in the recovery room just in excruciating pain. And I think they were kind of
Oh.
like messing with me, trying to get some updated x-rays or something. And I remember they were moving me around, and this is when I was waking up, and I was
Oh.
just like, this what is happening, because it was just the amount of pain. um
Yeah.
so so I was in the hospital for a week after
Hmm.
that, and just trying to heal, and trying to kind of get back home where I could continue my recovery.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Wow. Oh, that's just a lot for a little body to go
I
through.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and how was this emotionally? How did this impact you socially with like do you remember telling classmates that you had to have surgery, anything like that?
I definitely know it was communicated. I don't remember in what capacity. Maybe
Hmm.
the teachers might have facilitated that with me or something. But I was
Yeah.
I was out of school for 3 months,
Okay.
so I was
Hmm.
homeschooled, for that time.
Hmm.
And I do remember being in the hospital recovering and writing my classmates a letter about the whole experience. And then I know that the
Oh,
teacher read it out loud in class, and they were like, the whole class was silent and everybody's thinking of you. Like, it was this very supportive community.
I
Uh,
love that.
yeah, so definitely, like, and got, visits from close classmates. They made me like a big poster, like, get well soon, with like their picture. It was just
That's
very,
so sweet.
yeah, it was very sweet and very supportive. And I just wanted to get back to school. I think, it was just like, I
That
want to
sounds like you.
be
I want to
normal.
get back to school. I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, that time in the hospital, the nurses were amazing. I just remember those pediatric nurses. I was like, these are angels on earth. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
truly. And it's like I would be in this, position where you're kind of on your side, you're kind of laying on your side, and then you have pillows propped behind you, kind of supporting your back, and like pillows between your knees to try to keep things aligned. And
Hmm.
like they would get me all comfortable, and then like they would leave, and it was like they didn't even make it back to their front desk, like their nurses station, and I was already like, oh, I'm not comfortable anymore, and like push that button, and they would come back. And like I always felt like, oh, I'm sorry, but it's like they were like, no, this is, they were just so, this was their job, and they truly, the nurses I interacted with truly were wonderful at their jobs and wanted to be there. So
Oh,
and
good.
that was really inspiring to me at a young age. I was like, wow, maybe this is
Hmm.
something. I thought about, maybe I want to be a nurse. Like, after, I did not obviously pursue that, but it did cross my mind, and I was interested in it, because of how wonderful they were.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you received that level of care. And I feel like something that I've personally learned through just the podcast, talking to anybody about a medical experience, whether it's theirs or their child's, where that level of care seems to really mitigate against that trauma. Like this was a traumatic experience for you. Like throughout if I'm putting words in your mouth, be like, I wouldn't call it that, but just thinking about all the ways that you're trying to correct the issue, you're taking action, you're doing all the right things, and then you're still needing surgery. I just imagine if you're not met with a lot of love and support, that just might have, I don't know. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but
No,
like
that's
how
exactly
that could
right.
have had just a lot more of a traumatic impact on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. I'm glad that you received that level of care. And you were were you at a children's hospital? You said a local hospital.
No, it wasn't specifically a children's hospital. I mean, they had a pediatric ward that I was in, but it's our local
Okay.
hospital here in Marin. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Which I've returned to several times since then for various life events. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. You're an alumni
Yeah.
at that hospital. So what was recovery like? You said you were out of school for 3 months
Yes.
and being homeschooled.
Yes.
What does that look like when somebody's recovering from a surgery where they're putting titanium rods in their back?
Yeah. Well, we rented a hospital bed, and
Mm.
that was put in my room. And I remember my mom made my room like she put a couch in there. So she's like, when you have friends over, they can sit there and you guys can chat. And she was just trying to make this like
That's so sweet.
a really nice environment for me, as well as it, could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a lot. It started a lot of just a lot of time in bed, but also needing to get up and move around a little bit,
Mhm.
slowly, gradually. Um, and it was just kind of a slow progression of trying to get some strength back and not overdo it. It was just like this balance. Um,
Mhm.
and then I started getting homeschooled at my house. And this is when we insert my guardian angel, who's named Mary Helen. And this is one of the silver linings, but she appeared in my life through the school. And the school, was like, okay, Roxy's going to be out of school for 3 months and we need to help her stay up to speed
Mhm.
academically while she's recovering. And so this woman, Mary Helen, was a part of the church that was affiliated with the school. So it's a parochial
Mhm.
school. And she was a parishioner there, and she was like in her early 70s at the time. And she was a retired teacher, retired principal, school administrator. She had given her whole life to education. And
Mhm.
she had retired and was staying active with the church there, but wanted to give back. And so she had tutored some students at the school.
Mhm.
And they were like, oh, this will be a perfect match because
Yeah.
Mary Helen wants to stay involved. And this is what gives her life and her life's vocation. And
Yeah.
we needed this at this time. And so we were introduced, and Mary Helen started teaching me from my hospital bed at home.
Wow.
That was the start of a very amazing friendship between me and her for many, many, many years.
Oh, Mary
Yeah.
Helen. I'm so grateful that you had her in your life
Yes.
and that you were able to continue to have a meaningful relationship.
Yep.
I'm also just pausing because I'm thinking, I know you were like, this is 2001. That's a long time ago. I'm like, yeah. And then I start thinking about the literal measuring of your x-rays. And there's
Yes.
no Zoom option for you
No.
to do any sort of online learning. So
Mm-mm.
it is a physical person,
Mm-hmm.
Mary Helen, coming
Mm-hmm.
to your home, to
Mm-hmm.
your bedroom. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Books in hand, textbooks in hand.
Yeah, yeah, no virtual book, no tablets.
Yep. And she would sit there and yeah, I continued my learning. And she was a brilliant, gifted perfectionist. She would show up, like if she was coming at 10 o'clock, she was there at 10 o'clock. She wasn't there a minute early or a minute late. Rang that doorbell. And this was her life's purpose. I mean, truly, I mean, she just wanted to educate students and make a difference. And we worked together, and those 3 months, of course, and we continued that partnership because she and I just hit it off so well. But
Hmm.
I had gone back to the classroom at that point about 3 months later, and she ended up passing away in 2021. Sorry, yeah,
Oh,
2021. So just a few years ago, at the age of
yeah.
93. Um,
Oh,
but she, for years, all those years later, would talk about how the teacher said, well, when Roxy returned to class, she was ahead of the textbook by several chapters. And we put her in front of on the board at that time, chalkboard. And she would teach I had her teach a lesson to the class. And Mary Helen was just like, that just lit her up. Like I was able to help her, like get ahead of the class and be able to teach. And that was like her passion. And she felt like that's what she was doing. And she was succeeded in that.
oh man, that is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Because truly, when we think about children even having like shorter term absences from school, it has such an impact on their ability to progress academically.
Mhm.
Be- and so I just love that you were able to re-enter
Yeah.
ahead,
Yep.
because then there's also like the social aspect of re-entry.
Yes.
And so I just, oh my, did
Yeah.
she tutor you after that? Is that kind of how
She
that morphed?
Yeah,
Okay.
she continued to tutor me, but yeah, we got so far ahead on that one-on-one work during that 3 month time that I was home that, we were just advancing through the book a little quicker. I mean, you can get so much done when you're one-on-one.
Yeah.
And because she would really meet me where I was individually at. And her thing was math. I mean, like she was brilliant in all fronts,
Mm,
but math, I mean, she's just like this mathematician. Um, and so, but
wow.
yes, we did continue to work together for a lot of times after that, and then just continued our friendship until she passed away,
Oh,
for
that's
a few
really
years. Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
I feel like in our, and I promise I won't go too far in a tangent, but
yeah.
I think so much about how in generations before us, even like our parents' generations, how there used to be more of a community, often around church, or where you lived, and people took care of each other, and you got to learn from people that weren't your parents, that were older, or weren't your grandparents, but were like of an older generation. And so I really love how Mary Helen plugged into your life and stayed there as this, person who was coming out of retirement to help you and fulfill her life's purpose, and what you received and how you felt connected to her. That's just really
Hmm.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was a huge gift for me in my life. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It sounds like you learned a lot from her too, in terms of how I view you in terms
yeah.
of timeliness and organization and achievement.
Yes,
Yes.
very wise woman. I learned a lot from her, and leaned on her in all the life stages, job hunting and all the things, and we've had so many wonderful times together, lunch dates and helping her with
Yeah.
technology. And yeah, it went both ways. I wanted to help her and she wanted to help me, and um, it kind of was almost like a grandparent, because I never had local grandparents. So she was kind of like this
Oh, yeah.
grandparent figure for me a little bit. So yes, such a
Oh, that's so, I got goosebumps when you were saying that.
gift.
That's just so sweet.
Yeah.
Mary Helen, we love
Yes.
you.
Yes, we do.
Hmm. So let's continue talking about, your life post surgery.
Hmm.
What did your continued recovery look like once you had, recovered and we were back to more of a state of, I'm going to say
Hmm.
normal.
Hmm.
That's a fair
Yeah.
term. Okay.
Yeah, it was just gradual. And I remember when I returned to school, I couldn't sit in a seat for extended periods of time. So the only kind of transition there to going back to school was I would get up out of my chair and kind of go stand at the back of the classroom and take some breaks out of my
Mm,
chair. But over time things got better and recovered, um, and then I was cleared to pretty much live a normal, like you said, quote unquote, what's normal, but
yeah.
a normal life. I returned to playing volleyball even. I mean, I was back on the
Oh,
volleyball
right.
court. Um, and I wasn't supposed to ski or snowboard or ice skate. Those are like the things that
Oh, okay.
I was not supposed to do, just because like the fall there could be too severe. But
Right.
everything else was relatively, I was kind of back. Physically you could still see that things were not aligned, but as far as functioning, I was pretty, yeah, I was right there. And
Mm-hmm.
through high school and college, like, didn't really affect me.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
That is amazing. That's definitely amazing.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of your ongoing care and checkups, was that still just kind of standard pediatric, you go in, or did you need to see your providers a little more regularly just
I
because of the
did. Yeah.
mm,
I did see my provider for quite some time. And then I don't remember when, but it was like, okay, you're cleared. You don't need to see
wow.
me again unless there's an issue that comes up. And I was like, oh, it was just kind of a weird thing because this has been your life
Yeah,
so long. And I'm like, oh,
right.
and so yeah, then I was cleared, and it was like, we'll see you if there's any issues, but go live your life.
Yeah. And so that living your life looked like going on to high school, playing volleyball, I guess just to use the word normal again, like for all intents and purposes, like being a normal high school kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which was a huge gift. Yeah. It was kind of like, and then I went to high school and college, and I didn't have this sort of association with the scoliosis anymore.
Yeah.
Unless I wanted to bring it up, like how you kind of knew it was there in college, but it didn't affect, my everyday life. I mean, I have this, my physical body, my rib cage on the right sticks out, my shoulders are not aligned, sitting in a chair, like I'm always off alignment. There's things like that, but it's just who I am, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's just me now. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I was
And
able to just move forward.
yeah, and I feel like that's also stuff that like as I'm sitting here now, I'm like, oh, do I always sit with the shoulder? Like I don't think we notice that about others because we just like take
Yeah.
up our space and we move
Yep.
around. And so
Yeah.
people might not know that that was something that you had gone through unless you would have chosen to talk about it.
Right. Exactly.
And so then you graduated in 2010, right, from
Yes,
Chapman, and then
that's
you
right.
went back up to Marin County, which if people don't know, that's in California. I think
Yes.
most of our listeners
Yeah.
are probably aware, but just to name it, back
Yep.
back up north.
Right north of San Francisco, right over the Golden Gate
Hmm.
Bridge north. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you continued your life as a young professional.
Moved to San Francisco, was doing my thing post college, working and seeing friends and dating and, just doing all the things you do. And
Uh-huh.
yeah. And then met Mike, my husband, my now husband.
Hmm.
Um, and I met him, I think, in 2016.
Hmm.
And then
20.
that's yeah, so that was a big milestone for me.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about meeting him?
Sure, yeah. So dating apps were, I don't know if they still are, but were a very big thing at that time. And
Oh yeah, I think it's like one of the only ways people meet
yeah,
now.
I know. So, yeah, totally. So I was on the dating apps, and he was, which is so funny that he was on the dating apps because he just doesn't seem like that kind of person. But but anyways, um we met on a dating app, and it was like based on your proximity to each other, and so that's how we got matched. And turns out we literally lived on the same street, 1 block from each other in the city, which was just
Cute.
really convenient for dating. But anyways, so
Yeah.
we would just, I was like, oh, I'll meet you on the corner, and we would both walk half a block and then go like walk to dinner or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
we met in San Francisco and hit it off right away. And it was just like a breath of fresh air after
Mm.
years of dating.
Yes. Pardon my
Oh
little
gosh.
laugh there. I'm like I'm
Uh,
still very single. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you found
yeah.
Mike.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
Mike.
Wonderful Mike, sweet Mike.
And
Um,
do you want to tell us just a little bit more about him? Like, is he from California? What does he do professionally?
yeah, he's from Arizona, and he went
Okay.
to Santa Clara in Santa Clara, and which is ironically was like the other school I almost went to other than Chapman. So it was like
Oh,
we
really?
always joke like, oh, if we had gone to college together, we would not have wound up together.
Yeah.
um, but he's yeah, a tax accountant in San Francisco,
Hmm.
and he's the oldest of 5 kids, and
Oh,
all
okay.
of whom are actually still in air, or have, some of them have lived out here, but now they're all in Arizona. So we're the only ones in California.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he's the best. He's the greatest.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mike. That's great. So you meet in 2016, and I'm gonna like pair up your like you meet in 2016, you have a flare up in 2017.
Mhm.
Um, what was talk to us about that? What was that
Yeah.
like? And
Yeah.
yeah.
So I kind of, in 2017, I just remember we had been at a wedding together,
Mm-hmm.
and we got home from this wedding, and my back was just giving me all sorts of issues. And I was like, this is unusual. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, what's going on here? And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, maybe it's because I was like standing in heels for the weekend, or like, I don't know, like I did something. And Mike was like, why don't you go get a massage, sweet Mike? Why don't you go get a massage, and maybe that'll help? And
Yeah.
so, I did. I went to his health club and got a massage, and was like, maybe this will help. Maybe I'm just like tight. My muscles are tight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's always kind of a funny thing going to a massage therapist, because if it's somebody new, like I have my regular person who's amazing and she knows
Mm-hmm.
me, and but and that's now, but at that point I didn't. And I wasn't going to massages at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would always have to give like a, hey, I've got this scoliosis, you'll see the scar, I got the ribs sticking out, but then, like you'll see all this, but I'm just giving you like a warning. And so there's always kind of different reactions to that, and
Mm-hmm.
and the person I had gone to on this day, I think, was not like super trained in how to handle situations like this. Like,
Oh yeah.
basically, I was on the table and she goes, wow, your back really is messed up.
Oh,
And I was kind of like,
okay.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And it was just awkward and kind of like, it's something that stuck with me after all these years, where it's like, you don't say, it's just like the choice of words.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think that I would get like offended by something, but it's like, I was like, oh man, that was like not the right choice
Yeah.
of words. And so I gotten through this massage, which ended up not helping my situation. And I proceeded to go home back to our apartment and kind of like spiraled. I was kind of
Yeah.
got into this like online spiral that we shouldn't do when we're dealing with medical situations, but
But we all do
sometimes
it.
it's hard to avoid.
Yes. Yes.
And so after all these years, I was like, fine. And then I was like, oh gosh, like what is wrong with me? And I've like found a Facebook like scoliosis group or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just this dive into seeing really bad situations that people
Mm.
are dealing with who have scoliosis.
Yeah.
And it was like people who were permanently bedridden and on disability and had
Oh
no
wow.
quality of life. And i guess
Oh.
i guess I had like convinced myself that this was like the start of my decline. I really,
Oh.
I got in my
Yeah.
head mentally, and I just started to spiral. And
Mm-hmm.
I had my first ever panic attack,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just, it had never happened to me. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
and
It's
I was,
scary.
it's really scary when you
Yeah.
read the wrong things and see the wrong things. And who I was making this kind of story up in my head that this is what was happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, and first of all, I'm so sorry that that massage therapist said that to you. That's terrible bedside
Mhm.
manner. I just have this assumption that like if you are in that line of work that you need to be comfortable with all bodies. That's what I
Totally.
tell myself like when I don't shave my legs and go see my person where I'm like they're comfortable with bodies. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um but that is just you just don't
Yeah.
say that to somebody, especially
No.
if you've like so like yes I have scoliosis. This you will see that my back has like titanium rods
Mm-hmm.
in it and I need help. You don't say it's messed up.
Mm-hmm. And that was
Yeah.
kind of like, that was obviously a trigger that then launched me into this spiral, and
Right.
just how words can have such an impact,
Right. And then I definitely relate to the okay, I want to like I'm in pain. I know that I have this condition. I'm wanting to seek information, have the whole internet ahead of us, and you can really see in any you can see worst case scenario for pretty much anything on the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
if and it can be I've been in situations with other things where it's like it can be hard to look away to be like when you're in it and you're like you're a learner too where you're like I the more I know the more that I can prepare to handle this situation. So
Yeah.
I see how you arrived there and it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like it just got to be so much that your central nervous system was like we're having a panic attack,
Mm-hmm.
which is additionally like it's additionally scary if you haven't had that. I mean anytime
Oh
panic attack
yeah.
is always scary, but especially if
Yeah.
you're like wait, I've gone my whole life and I haven't had a panic
Yeah.
attack, and now I am. Is this? I
Yeah.
could, for me, I'd be like, is this part of it? Is this part of the decline?
Totally. Totally. It was bad.
Yeah,
And I had gone to the doctor because I had never experienced this. And I was like, am I dying? Like what my body is like.
right.
And my doctor confirmed, oh yeah, that is a panic attack. And we
Uh-huh.
use, in our society, we use the term panic attack lightly, but this was like a panic attack. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Were you sweating, crying,
All of
can't
it.
breathe,
Just, oh
all of it?
yeah, the
Yeah.
breathing, all of it. And
Yep.
I was even sick. Like it was
Oh
terrible.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
so yeah, so I it's funny, like I went to my primary care doctor, And then I tried to get in touch with my spinal surgeon,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't find him. And I later learned he had passed away. And
Oh,
I was
uh-huh.
like, my doctor. I'm like,
Yes.
of course there's other
No.
people that can handle this, but I was just like, he was my guy. So
Yeah.
I had to sort of reestablish myself. And it's the first time I had gone to a new specialist, and I saw a couple different scoliosis specialists, and
Mm-hmm.
we didn't pinpoint exactly what that flare up was,
Mm-hmm.
or why.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had issues off and on since. So,
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the start of it.
And for what it's worth, just to, again, mention the Chapman times when you were talking about, was it that I was in heels for a long time? Like, you could always walk in heels way longer and farther than me. I'll just say that.
Oh gosh,
It's
it's
been
so hard.
proven. It's been, yeah. I think there's like a picture coming to mind of us in Vegas, and I'm holding my shoes, and you and Taylor just like, I'm like, I am deceased. I can't take a step further. How do you guys do
uh,
this?
no,
Well,
I don't think I was very good at it either. And I would always have
oh,
those like roll up flats that you would like put on your,
yes,
like they rolled up in your bag. So I'd put those on.
yeah,
I mean,
so smart.
I've completely given up on heels. Like I don't even get near those anymore. But
Yeah, that was one of my hopes for us all leaving lockdown was can we all
yeah,
agree that we're not gonna do that unless
we're
it's like a
done.
thick wedge and
Yeah, I will wear wedges. That is it. No more heels.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. So all that to say, 2017 doesn't feel that much further from 2010, where like I know
Hmm.
for sure I saw you walking around in
Oh
heels.
yeah.
So it
Oh, of
just
course.
seems like, and I know we age and things change, but
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
interesting. So it sounds like the doctors assured you everything's fine. Was there
Yeah.
any other information that you received that was helpful or that informed action you take now?
Yeah, no, I mean it was really just standard. They took updated x-rays, and the scoliosis doctor that I was starting to go to said, who's great at UCSF, and should I need help again, I will go back to him. He's my guy now. But
Mm-hmm.
he was like, this was a really well done fusion. And I was like, oh, that just feels good. Like, thank you.
Yes.
Like, you're looking at this,
Ooh,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? And I'm like, oh, good. Like, he's like, yeah, this was really well done. And I'm like, I don't really know what that means. And like, how that's your expertise. Thank you. But just
Yeah.
him saying that was reassuring for me.
I bet.
Because, you're like, you see these people that get their hardware removed after because it's causing too many issues. And I was like, is that the road I'm down? Do I need to get this
Ooh.
removed? Like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like no, there's no reason to, unless we have other issues. And um so everything, off and on pain, but manageable from that point forward.
Mm-hmm.
um and I guess until my first pregnancy.
Your first pregnancy, which when did you get engaged, married, and when was your first pregnancy? If you could just like
Yeah,
tell us about those big life events for you.
yeah, so when we met in 16, engaged fall of 17, married spring of 18, first baby 19, late summer of 19. So it was like every year was like a big thing until
I
2019.
love it. Just getting it done. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. um yeah, so first pregnancy with my son Hudson was in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always, I mean, as we said, at a young age, I was always concerned about, well, I always wanted to be a mom, that I knew,
Yeah.
should the stars align for me. And but in the back of my head, I was always concerned about scoliosis and pregnancy, of course, right? Like,
Yeah.
how can you
Right.
not be? And I've
Mm-hmm.
got all this whole situation in my back, and the hardware and the curvature, and your body moves, and it needs to be flexible to grow a human. And
Right.
that was always in the back of my head, just concerned about
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I'm not gonna like not try to do this
Mm-hmm.
because I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, there's been a lot of success stories out there of people that can do this. So
Mm-hmm.
and the doctor, the new doctor I'd gone to, said there's no reason to be concerned from his perspective other
Okay.
than just the usual wear and tear and whatnot, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
felt confident that it was okay. And um, I had a really like smooth sailing first half, I would say, of my pregnancy. Um, and then I started kind of developing a lot of pain with this SPD that I know we'll kind of touch on. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so symphysis pubis dysfunction. It's a mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is a pelvic pain in your hips and pelvis and SI joints. And I believe it's related to my scoliosis and being unaligned. But of course,
Mm-hmm.
people can get this who don't necessarily have scoliosis.
Mm-hmm.
So this was just, it was a very painful second half of my pregnancy. And Hudson was,
Mm-hmm.
they call it transverse, not fully breech,
Mm-hmm.
transverse. So that like could have been contributing to that severe pain as well. Uh,
Okay.
I felt strongly, unlike I would say majority of women, that I wanted a C-section
Mm.
because a lot of my back is fused and cannot, my spine doesn't move.
Mm.
And when you're giving birth, your spine needs to be flexible and moving. And I don't have
Yeah.
that ability other
Yeah.
than the bottom like 4 vertebrae that are not fused. And those 4 vertebrae take a lot of stress for the rest of my back
Yeah.
because those are the
Yeah.
only ones that are moving. So
Mm-hmm.
I was always concerned about that process.
Mm-hmm.
But the doctor, you can't just be like, oh, I want a C-section. You have to have a
Yeah.
reason, like your baby has to be breech or you have some pre-existing condition, or there's a number of things
Mm-hmm.
that can let you schedule a C-section.
Mm-hmm.
And lucky for me, when Hudson was transverse in his positioning,
Mm-hmm.
that was my end for the C-section. So that, like, because the
Okay.
stars kind of aligned for me in that way. And I'm always like,
Yeah.
thank you, Hudson, you were looking out for me.
Yes. Yes. Good job, buddy.
But just the fact that like the medical field isn't going to look at like, oh, this person has scoliosis and like a spinal fusion, and like perhaps I felt so confidently like knowing my body
Yeah.
that was the better route for me and my condition.
I am genuinely surprised that
Yeah.
having scoliosis alone, having a fused spine, knowing what we know about how malleable and flexible the body needs to be to grow and birth a baby, like I'm genuinely surprised that that isn't like one of those like knockout, like, oh, this, then C-section.
Right, at least giving
Yeah.
them the choice to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
I could have very well, if he was in a different position, I could have very well been forced into the alternative, which who knows how that would have turned out, I don't know, but I feel pretty strongly that it wouldn't have gone well, you know
Yeah.
just based on my body and my spine.
Yeah.
So and then you
Mm.
wind up in an emergency C-section, which those are warrior moms that do that,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I know it is perplexing that it's not acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me wonder what else is out there that's like, oh, that I would assume that, would be a knockout condition, but that it's not, and there has to be like
Right.
something else, like how the
Mm-hmm.
baby's position. That's I think we've come a long way, but I think we still have a long ways to go with certain
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want me to just talk a little bit about the SPD now before
Sure.
we so just my light research, exactly what you said. So it's like Roxy said, it's symphysis pubis dysfunction, SPD. It occurs during pregnancy when the ligaments that normally keep the pubic symphysis joint stable become too relaxed and stretchy due to hormonal changes, leading to pain and instability in the pelvic region. The hormone relaxin causes increased joint mobility in preparation for childbirth, but in some cases it leads to excessive movement and misalignment of the pubic symphysis. Symptoms include pain in the pubic area, groin, lower back, hips, and thighs, difficulty walking, climbing stairs, turning in bed, standing on one leg, a grinding, clicking, or popping sensation in the pelvic area, worsening pain with movement, especially when spreading the legs apart, and risk factors, which I know this will inform what we're talking about for future pregnancies. Having it before, so previous SPD and pregnancy, having multiples, so twins, triplets, etc. If you have a large baby or rapid fetal growth, pelvic injury, or hypermobility conditions. And then this just discusses really briefly the treatment and management, like physiotherapy, exercise, avoiding certain movements, and then using heat, ice, or medication for pain relief. And the prognosis is that it usually, after childbirth, goes away, but some symptoms can persist and require ongoing treatment. And it makes sense to me, Roxy, where if this is caused by a hormone, knowing what we know about your spine, where you have the four vertebrae that are doing most of the mobility work, that again, not a medical professional, but where it's like, yeah, the body's like probably trying to like help that part of your body be like extra mobile, and it's causing you a tremendous amount of pain.
Yeah. So
you had those same symptoms, the back area, groin, lower back, hip, thighs, all of it.
All of it. And
oh,
I wasn't,
man.
And I was not diagnosed with this at this point. I now know about, like, this is what was going on. And I was like, oh my God, this is miserable. Why am I in this so much pain? Yes, my back, but like my pelvis. And I now know all this. 3 pregnancies, you know, on my 3rd baby coming soon. But yeah, I didn't know what this was at the time. I was just miserable. And I was like, why? And I just was like, oh, it's the scoliosis, you know, and it I'm sure it's related. I'm sure. But
did your providers say that too? Were they like, oh, this is probably your pre-existing condition?
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, it's triggering that. But I never knew about that term, or that this was like a thing that women deal with. You know, I was never educated on that.
Well, and I'm sorry, but also with that last symptom, worsening pain with movement, especially spreading the legs apart. I'm like, how is this not also one of those? I just can't imagine delivering vaginally if you can't spread your legs, or if it's like causing you more pain. I'm like,
I know.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so
like,
sorry.
Like putting like pants on one leg at a time. Like that is a really bad movement.
Okay. Yeah.
Like just anything that you're kind of, you know, like stairs, walking in general. But when it's bad, it's really bad. Like can't make it from point A to point B. But like I said to you earlier that, you know, we the last couple of weeks, like I'm feeling pretty good, you know. So it's like I was really bad, and then for whatever reason, maybe the hormones are stabilizing or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
I'm okay right now, and it's like life-changing when I can walk and I'm at like a level 2 pain and not like a level 9 pain. But I feel for these women, and I've only really interacted with one other friend who's experienced this, who does not have scoliosis, but she sympathizes. She's like, or empathizes. She's like, I know. She's like, I had to get my handicap placard for my car, and my doctor gave me that. And, you know, she understands how bad it is. She's like, you need to get that. And I'm just like, thank you. Thank you for getting it. You know, it's really bad.
Yeah. So I'd love to like just talk about of your pregnancies. So with Hudson, was he, I just know that large baby can be a risk factor. How big was he? And you scheduled your C-section, so you didn't have the labor contractions. Sorry if that's an ignorant question.
No. So I did have both of my babies so far that have been born have actually been relatively on the smaller side, so that's good.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, good just for my back and my situation. But
right.
But I had a scheduled C-section with Hudson, but he decided to join us early, about 3.5 weeks before my due date. And my water broke while I was sleeping, and they just basically moved my C-section up to the next morning. I think it like broke at like 11:30 p.m. and they scheduled me for 7 a.m. that next morning. And it wasn't it wasn't like the movies, like, you're racing to the hospital. You know, it was just very mild. I wasn't even feeling contractions until I got to the hospital. But they were still mild at that point. And then by that point, it was time for the surgery. So it
Yeah.
wasn't scheduled, but my body had started the process just before, so we moved it up.
Oh, okay. Good. I'm glad they were able to just so seamlessly fit you in
Yes.
and that your labor didn't progress any further, knowing what we know
Right.
about SPD.
Totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then the SPD really went, well, I guess we should talk about the C-section though.
Oh, yeah.
Because both of them were very different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had a lot of concern about the anesthesia aspect of all this.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So yeah, so generally with a vaginal birth, you're given an epidural should you choose to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
with a C-section, you get a spinal tap generally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, does my scoliosis and this fusion like affect that at all?
Right.
And so I always had that in the back of my head, and I had brought it up, and my OB at the time was like, no, it should be fine. Like, don't worry about it. Kind of brushed it off. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if you're confident, I guess we're good. Like,
Yeah.
it's all good. You're the expert. So when I was in the operating room, I actually had a really traumatic experience with the anesthesia.
Oh,
It's
no.
kind of like your gut knows, like
Yeah.
I don't know, you just like know when something is maybe going to be a problematic. You,
Yeah.
you know your own body, and you know what the concern should be. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was given a spinal tap, and which it's supposed to numb you basically, from your feet to, like, I don't know, your chest or something, like
Chest line. Yeah.
like you should be able to like feel your hands and use your
Mm-hmm.
hands. And I was numb all the way up, like to my chin basically. So
Oh,
it
okay.
gives you this feeling that you can't breathe, because if your neck is numb and your throat is numb.
Yeah.
So this was like my second panic after the 2017
Yes.
panic.
Yes.
This is my second panic.
Oh
um
my gosh.
so I was like, and I guess this is related to the scoliosis, but also not. I just want to like advocate for women going through this and just like spread
Yeah.
awareness about this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I had this horrible experience where I, felt like I couldn't breathe. They were telling me I was breathing, and I was like panicking. The only thing I could move was my head. Couldn't feel
Mm-hmm.
my hands, couldn't feel myself breathing, nothing. And so they ended up putting me under during the
Oh,
operation because of
okay.
this. And so I was like not aware or awake for Hudson's birth. So
Mm,
I basically woke up, and like Mike was holding Hudson, and I was kind of like,
mm.
what happened? I was like,
Yeah.
can I see my baby? Like, what color hair does he have? It was
Yeah.
like, what is going on? And it was just kind
Oh.
of, I didn't realize at the time, like, how not okay that was, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
how, like, it took me a long time to like process that. I think
Yeah.
after that birth, I probably would have said, like, oh yeah, I mean, it was too bad because I was panicking, but he's here and everybody's healthy now. It's like I wouldn't have
Y-
like given these details of like, all these things happened and it was not okay,
Right. Right.
with the anesthesia. And
Oh.
I remember
Mm.
the next day, my OB at the time had come into the hospital, and she was just like, yeah, you just like really got in your head, I think, and you were just kind of like this happened and then you just couldn't come out of it, and I think it was just better that you went under because you were just not in a good state, and da 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 da,
Mm.
and kind of like pushing it on me, like that.
Uh-huh.
So I had this mindset of like, oh, I was just panicking because I was in this surgery and I was awake, and like maybe I could breathe, but this was like another factor, and I thought I couldn't breathe, and like I was like telling
Mm-hmm.
myself now this narrative because of another person's comment, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so it wasn't until after my second Harper, my daughter, was
Mm-hmm.
born, that I was able to really process all of this.
Yeah.
I had started in my second pregnancy, which I guess then was the end of 2022. I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I started with my original OB because I just kind of, it's who I knew, and I didn't really realize how bad that situation was. I ended
Mm-hmm.
up, I ended up moving to a new OB, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and explained what had happened the first time, just trying to get
Mm-hmm.
like clarity and saying the scoliosis thing. And I think this anesthesia might have like not mixed well with the scoliosis and the fusion. And they're like, oh, that's called a high spinal. Like
Yep.
you had a high spinal. And I go, what's a high spinal? Like I've never heard this term.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't until then, why am I learning about this
Mm-hmm.
years later, what actually this was?
Yeah.
And this new OB was, I can't even tell you how attentive he was to this.
Good.
He was like, this, we are going to do everything we can to make this not happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And when I showed up at the hospital that morning for my scheduled C-section,
Mm-hmm.
it was like he had communicated with the anesthesiologist on call. That anesthesiologist came in to talk to me an hour and a half before my operation. We looked at my x-rays together. He wanted to hear me out. He wanted to understand what happened. He looked at the records from the previous C-section to see if he should do something differently, like was
Mm-hmm.
so thorough and heard me.
Good.
And everything was night and day from the first one.
Oh, I'm so
I
glad.
was calm. I was comfortable. It was peaceful. I was awake. I was not panicked. And it
Yeah.
was like the best birth of like ever. And
Yeah.
all I had known was that first experience. And so I just want to advocate for women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you have one experience, does not have to dictate how your next experience goes, and advocating for
Right.
yourself. And maybe like it's not always a great match with you and your doctor, and maybe there's other options that are a better fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my experience in that, with that whole process.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad that you're talking about that and that you were able to have that redemptive second experience with Harper's birth. I know I mentioned this to you pre-show, but I know another person who had a high spinal and um, sh same thing. I can't breathe, and was just in panic because she was like, I didn't feel like I literally had the ability to do anything but move my head, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, and she then that definitely identifies as having a traumatic birth
Yeah.
because of that. And I am pretty horrified that your provider didn't acknowledge that that was a high spinal, because that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
My friend who had that happen does not have scoliosis that I'm aware of, or any other condition that, if they wanted to point to something in your case, I know that this person doesn't have that. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, not that we need to be on here bashing providers. I know you said a lot of really positive stuff, but like I guess I also wanted to ask, did you feel like you consented to being put under like full anesthesia, or was okay? So
That was
that's like,
never a
yep,
discussion. Never a discussion.
okay. And that for people who have experienced birth trauma are aware of like some of the criteria of like psychologically of birth trauma, that informed consent piece of like,
Yeah.
you get to make that decision.
Right.
You didn't get that, so
No.
that's just, even just that one piece
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
contributing to trauma.
Yeah.
And then you don't get all those other things that new moms want,
No, totally.
but
Yeah.
like new baby on your chest and
Yeah. All of that.
meeting him.
Right. Yeah. It was a
Oh,
very weird, and like I said, it wasn't until after Harper's birth that I was like, wow, that really was not ideal, like that first
yeah.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
and the OB that I had at the time, I can't tell you how respected this person is in
Mm-hmm.
the county. Like she's very,
Really.
very respected, very top
Mm-hmm.
doctor. And so that's why I was like, this is me,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
her. She knows she's the expert, but it's like, it just was not, clearly not a match, and things were not thoroughly handled in the way
Mm-hmm.
it should have been, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
And I guess I'm gonna call out one of my own biases. I tend to be somebody who only has female providers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just from a like, I'm assuming that as like woman to woman, you're gonna understand when I'm describing something to you.
Mm-hmm.
We've
Mm-hmm.
lived in a female body.
Right.
And so I guess what I'm calling out is the person who then ended up giving you the best care, gave you this experience with Harper's birth that was night and day.
Mm-hmm.
It was male. So I guess again, just
Mm-hmm.
like for me being like, don't assume that
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
on somebody's gender that they're going to be the best provider for you.
For sure. And I used to be
Mhm.
that way too, and that I always preferred females, especially in this capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it was just something about this male doctor that he was so empathetic to the
hmm
situation. And
hmm
I was like, I need more of that. I need more of that for this. So
Yes. And did they diagnose the SPD, this provider, or were you like, hey, I think this is happening?
he did. That's the first time I heard the SPD from him.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
then now it's just kind of talked about with the physical therapist I'm seeing,
Okay.
pelvic PT. She confirmed that's what this is. And I kind of knew just from Google, Dr. Google, but I just kind of knew because the symptoms were so aligned. But yes, that the second provider is when I started to learn about that. So we were
Yeah.
filling in a lot of the gaps, just filling in a lot of the question marks that there were from
hmm
the first, that I didn't get the care that was needed,
Yeah.
you know?
It sounds like you found somebody who listens to you, is empathetic,
Mm-hmm.
communicates well. Oh my gosh, especially in birth situations like what you're talking about with the anesthesiologist, and just how it
Mm-hmm.
helped you feel so assured
Mm-hmm.
and safe.
Yes.
And that's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
100%. 100%.
So you mentioned ongoing PT with pelvic floor stuff. Is that just most moms I feel like are recommended to do some sort of like PT for their pelvic floor,
Yeah.
or is that tied to your scoliosis?
You know, that's a more recent thing, just with my third pregnancy here in the SPD and trying to get that
Yeah.
pain managed a little bit. But just for like general maintenance for the scoliosis, I go to a general physical therapist
Okay.
um, for core strength and back health. And that's how I've really learned how to modify in classes and how
Mm-hmm.
to sort of keep my back stable, and really protect those vertebrae at the bottom from extra wear and tear that's not good for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a tool for me, but just like maintenance, I continue to see him, um, but then I've added some other care because of being pregnant, like just kind of
Mm-hmm.
how to amp it up a bit.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I've discovered is osteopathy. So I go see an osteopath, which is
Okay.
like totally new to me. And I don't know if like a
I
lot of people don't
don't
know a lot about.
I
Yeah,
don't think I know what that is. I'm like breaking down the Latin roots. I'm like,
I know. We can look
no,
at
what
this. I'm gonna butcher it. I have to get an actual definition here.
thank you for doing that.
Yeah, because it's like I try to explain this to people. They're like, "What are you talking about?" Uh, yeah, a branch of medical practice that emphasizes the treatment of medical disorders through the manipulation and massage of the bones, joints, and muscles.
Oh, okay.
So they're actual doctors. They're called DOs in the United States.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I discovered osteopathy through, another medical professional, for my scoliosis. And so I went 2 weeks ago, and my SPD has gotten a lot better since I went to her. So I'm
Oh,
going to
good.
say that it's useful,
hmm
and it's helping me. But yes, just learning to sort of what each person with this condition needs to feel their best, and finding
hmm
your people and your support team of professionals, you know
hmm
that can assist in that. And I know there's a financial aspect of that, and there's a time aspect of that, both of which are sacrifices that need to
hmm
be made. But tapping into your team has been essential for me in kind of maintaining as healthy of a life as I can.
hmm No, I think that's really admirable. I think that when I've noticed there seems to be a trend of at least women in my life where they're like, I value Western medicine. I'm gonna go to my OB. I'm gonna, I I think osteopathy isn't that like there's a lot of Eastern medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if acupuncture is a part of that, but
Yeah,
friends in pregnancy
acupuncture
journeys,
and osteopathy love each other. Those two
yeah,
are,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, where it's like balancing things in a different way, and using
Right.
acupuncture and chiropractic manipulation, all
Mm-hmm.
is like using both to like take
Mm-hmm.
care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty incredible what we can
Yeah.
do when we leverage all those things
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Hmm.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm
I've
glad
had
you
to
were
kind of
able.
dive into that world and, just see what I can learn about it and see what can help me in my situation. So
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Do you mind if we talk a little bit more about this pregnancy?
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so so we're recording for our listeners, recording March 1st. Well, this episode will go live later this month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, for Women's History Month, which it just feels so right for you,
Oh,
Roxy.
good. Yes. Love that.
So how far along are you? When's your due date?
Yeah.
Did your experiences with the two previous pregnancies play a role in your decision to have
Mm-hmm.
another baby? Just
Mm-hmm.
tell us all
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. So I'm about halfway. I'm about 20 weeks right now.
Oh,
I'm
yay,
I'm
congrats.
due, thank you. I'm due mid-July.
Mm,
So Hudson will be just close to turning 6 by the time this baby's here, and Harper will be just 2 years old, just freshly two. She's an early July baby.
oh,
So we have a third joining the party, and that's
woo.
fun. It's a scary, it's the scariest leap yet because of
Is
just being
it?
outnumbered, and like I'm like,
Oh
how
yeah,
are we gonna do this?
zone
Um,
defense now.
totally, totally. But as I said, I knew I've always wanted to be a mom. I think that this, one, like, no question, I was like, and then having Harper, I was so set on having Harper just as an only child myself, and my experience with that. I'm not like, every situation for every family is different, and
Oh
but
yeah,
for me, like growing up, as an only, I always wanted a sibling. And then,
yeah,
like, later in life, I always like still wanted a sibling, just with life's challenges and losing my dad, and like I was always like, oh, it would be so nice to have a sibling. So I knew I wanted to give
totally.
Hudson a sibling. Like, I was set on that. And
Mm-hmm.
so Harper, we had a very hard time getting pregnant with Harper, but I was like, I
Mm.
fought for it, got through that, and had Harper. And then it was like, well, two's comfortable, like, we're balanced, we're even, like, what, it just felt like, oh, this is good, like, we can do this. But my
Mm-hmm.
heart was like, oh, like, it would be really great to have three, like, I'm thinking like long term, like, my heart wanted that. But
Yeah.
you've got the scoliosis, you've got the SPD, you've got like just maxed out on life and motherhood and all the things
Yeah.
that I'm like,
Yeah.
is this the right decision? It's like, it's kind of like your heart and your head, right? It's like,
Yeah.
my heart wanted this, my head was like, no.
Mm-hmm.
And just from a logistical standpoint and kind of that. And I was kind of like, and Mike's always, he's the oldest of five. He's like, I'll have as many kids as you want to have. He's just like,
Yeah.
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 And I was kind of like, well, it took us like, it was a big journey to have Harper. And I thought, this is probably unlikely that this will happen. But
Okay.
it was like, if it does happen, I really felt like it's meant to be, because my heart keeps thinking about this, and I'm just like pulling out.
Yeah.
And so I just, lives, not trying, not trying. It was just kind of like, let's just live our lives and whatever. And I thought,
Yeah.
this is unlikely. This is probably not going to happen. And then bam, here we are.
Yeah.
And so I feel confident. And it's another girl.
Oh.
So Harper and this little girl will be close in age. Hudson's like doing his thing. He's going to be a big 6-year-old, like kindergarten, doing his thing. So I feel like, I think the timing is good. And it was a big, heavy decision with all these other factors, and
Mm-hmm.
but it feels right. So
Oh, I am so happy for you. That's
thank
just so
you.
great. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
that you're going to have this
Yeah.
beautiful little girl in July.
Thank you.
And that you've learned so much from your previous two pregnancies. And I feel like the woman that you were when you were first pregnant with Hudson versus the pregnancy with baby three,
Mm-hmm.
you just learn so much. You know where the resources are, you know where the tools are, you know who to
Totally.
call. It just like feels like there's just been so much learning for you since then, and growing
100%.
I imagine, too.
100%. Yes,
Hmm.
exactly.
Oh, how exciting.
Thank
and
you.
and you were also saying though that early you were like in, I guess I was going to try to pinpoint where in like first trimester, beginning of second
Mhm.
trimester, but that you were having SPD issues again.
Really bad, really
Okay.
bad.
When did that start presenting in this pregnancy?
Early, like 9 weeks probably.
Oh, yeah.
hmm And
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, this is this, because usually it would come a little later. And I
When they
was
get
like,
bigger, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Like I didn't have these issues with Hudson's pregnancy until later, and then it got really, really bad. But this
Yeah.
time I was like, it started presenting itself early, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a long haul. Like I already was like, there were days I was already in bed, and I had to work like from my bed with the pillows in a certain way because I would literally get up to go to the bathroom, and
Yeah.
that
That's
was
what you
it.
could do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for
So there were
sure.
days like that, and that can send you into like a sad place because you can't live your life. And I'm trying to chase
For
two other
sure.
kids around, and it's challenging. And so I have come out of that for now, and I'm gonna ride this wave as long as I can of feeling
Good.
pretty
Yeah.
darn good. I kind of know what triggers when it presents itself. I kind of know what increases the pain, and I try to avoid those things.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, so we're just taking this week by week, day by day right now, and we're halfway there. So that's good.
That's so exciting. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, and I'm leaning on my people, my team, My mom's local.
Good.
She's an enormous help. I've got a very hands-on husband, and we've got a nanny that helps us too, who's wonderful, Natalie. And yeah,
I love that.
balancing it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I would love to have a little birth announcement when baby three makes
Yes.
it as a part of Uniquely Qualified, because I feel like we're all invested in your pregnancy journey and in her arrival. So this is
Yeah,
just so
thank you.
exciting.
Thank you
Hmm.
so much.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your scoliosis journey, how it's impacted your journey to being a mom before we go to our final show questions?
Um, Not that I can really think of. I think we've really covered the main high points here. Yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
awesome. All right then, Roxy. Question number one. If you could go back to right before you received your scoliosis diagnosis, what would you say to that younger version of yourself?
I would tell her to hang in there,
Hmm.
and it's okay to be scared, but it's going to be
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
And to find your support system, and that there will be bumps in the road, but we come out stronger from those.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Second question. What tool or resource has been most helpful in navigating your experience?
Some of these we've touched on, which is like the
Hmm.
physical therapy, the osteopathy, and the massage therapy. But aside from that, there's an organization. So social media and kind of that conversation we've had of like,
Yeah.
there's some really like not good avenues to go down on social media, and then there's some really like good positive ones. And today, there's a lot of resources online and communities online that
Hmm.
that didn't exist in 2001 when I was having this surgery. Um, but
Right.
but I found this organization, Back to Healing, which was founded in 2016, and this man Marcus John founded it, and
Hmm.
their missions to improve quality of life of individuals affected by scoliosis through mental health awareness, empowerment, education, and advocacy.
Hmm.
So I think this is a particular resource I have found online that is
Hmm.
just empowering. And this past July, he had this empowerment campaign, and it's called A Curved Reality. And it was in partnership with Brown University in
Hmm.
Providence, Rhode Island. And it was a photo shoot and then later an exhibit of these photos of people with scoliosis in all walks of life. So some of them had, mild to severe cases, fused or non-surgical, all these different people that came together, and they took these beautiful photos of all these backs and
Hmm.
displayed them, and they had an event. And I was like, oh, I need to like fly out there and go to this thing.
No
But it
kidding.
was like this community of like top doctors and people of all the same types of or different types of scoliosis.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what a resource. And I just was following this online, and I was like very inspired by this and hearing people's stories, hearing from doctors. And I think tools like this are really, really helpful, because at the time when I was going through this, it was isolating.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anybody personally going through this. And this
Right.
way to connect with people who are maybe
Mm-hmm.
not local to you, but is what a gift. That is something I wish I had back then, and that's here now. And thank you to Marcus John. Shout out to him. He's doing
Marcus
good work.
John. Yeah. Um, Thank you. So we will definitely put a link to Back to Healing in show notes so that people can
Yeah.
access that via Spotify. And
Mm-hmm.
then the week of your episode, Roxy, I will happily share pieces from that empowerment campaign and other pieces of media that just shine a light on this topic.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that it's been so like connective and meaningful for you too.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
that's wonderful.
Yes. Thank you. It's amazing.
Hmm. Okay, final story. Final story. Final question. If anyone is relating to your story, what would you say to them?
I would say find a good qualified doctor that is a good match for you,
Hmm.
and find your team of experts to support you, and lean on your village. And, living is a blessing, and it does not come without struggles. And you just have to navigate through it and come out on the other end of it. I think utilizing resources like this Back to Healing, anything that you need to get through this, and connection with people that can relate to you,
Hmm.
is just essential. It's essential to
Yeah,
getting through it. So,
yeah,
mhm.
yeah. I think that's great. Where find your community. You've shared lots of ways that people can connect if they don't already have that. So I think that's just really empowering.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Roxy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing with us today. It's just been such a treat connecting with you.
Thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. I feel like I am learning myself from your other episodes, just hearing other people's stories. And thank you for your work and time in doing this such important work.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I'm so happy that you had me on your show.
Oh man, such an honor, and thank you for your kind words. It's like so great to hear that we're learning from one another. Like this
Yeah,
has been such a learning opportunity for me, and I just feel like when we know more, then we can just show up and be better sisters, daughters, community members, coworkers. So thank you for
absolutely.
saying
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in and learning from Roxy and her experience. If you don't already, please follow Uniquely Qualified on Instagram, where we are Uniquely Qualified Pod, and we're also on Spotify, which is where you can stream this. If you feel so moved, I would love a 5-star review for today's episode. And if you know somebody who has scoliosis or has loved somebody with scoliosis, please share this episode with them. It might really help them feel connected and plugged into community, like Roxy was saying. And if you've overcome a challenge that you'd like to share, please directly message me on Instagram, which, as I said, is Uniquely Qualified Pod. And no matter what, as you go through today, please remember we are all uniquely qualified.